Yeah, boom. Here we go. So a little bit about me so you understand. I did not anticipate this would be funny.
It's a good picture.
But I'm glad it is. So the things that are important for you to know. I've been doing marketing and sales in some capacity for the last 10 years, mainly in the B2B space, particularly in tech and SaaS. I've been here at H&B as the director of marketing for 4 years. Again, focused almost exclusively on sales enablement, getting our story right, arming sales with tools they need to close deals. Now we're moving into how do we grow outside of our current markets and how do we develop systems that help mitigate our risk. While I'm really excited about this topic and I think why we're all here, I don't mean to sound like a marketer, but I really believe it. I think there's an amazing opportunity for us to be heroes in our organization. As I reflect back over 5 years of in marketing recently, growth is hard, right? I mean, it looks like there's a fair group of marketing and sales and ops and technologists in this room, and we're all in some way ultimately responsible for making sure our company grows revenue. But lately, I've experienced, man, a lot of companies are hitting a ceiling because things are changing really fast. And there's a lot of reasons why this revenue ceiling is becoming harder and harder to break. I always try to keep things really simple. So I've kind of boiled it down to 2 reasons that I think everyone in this group is trying can contribute solving to. So first is customer experience, right? So the buying process has fundamentally changed forever, but our selling processes largely haven't. So it used to be, even 5 years ago, before content marketing exploded, before digital tools that could track customer data exploded, companies that we sell to today used to rely on reps like ours to help tell them things they didn't know, to help them imagine solutions they didn't know existed, to help their company achieve breakthroughs or solve their problems. However, content marketing has exploded. There are digital tools that exist now that help make this whole thing a lot easier. It's never been easier to spin up a company and compete with companies like all of yours and like H&B. Imagine this kind of journey. By the way, I went to art school, so this is the best I can do. I drew this on a whiteboard. Yes, so sorry. So if you think about
Arrow's my favorite.
That's the best part.
Yeah, that's the best I could do, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sure if you're in sales and marketing, you may have a different definition for the journey a person takes to become a paying customer. This is just how I've defined it here at H&B. So for our context today, just keep that in context. This just kind of visualizes, again, whether you are a prospect or a lead opportunity, this is largely sales driven, right? Sales would reach out to you. They would get your attention. They would say things. It was easier to get your attention because there wasn't a lot of noise in the market. Marketing would really just kind of support. Sometimes it's supportively, but in my experience, it's been mostly the opportunity and conversion stages is where marketing would support. It's flipped, right? What I'm seeing in my network, my mentor network, and in my experience, marketing is really driving the first large part of this. So how do we start meaningful conversations with buyers when they're ready? And how do we capture qualified leads and work to convert them into opportunities? And sales really takes over as a guide when a customer directly says, hey, I'm ready to talk to you, or they have a digital, I call it like a digital hand raise, right? And marketing, supports that close. So this is kind of the model going into that I'm seeing right now. So we need to kind of get there. The second problem I'm experiencing or I'm seeing is there's no systems, right? So revenue teams aren't equipped with the people, process, and technology to deliver for the C-suite. When I talk to our CEO, our CFO, and our ex-COO, I was like, hey, what do you want to see? Like, how am I going to be evaluated? How will we know if we're successful? The themes that I'm hearing are, hey, we want predictable growth. So we want to be able to see the future and know that the investments we're making are sound. We want efficient growth, right? So we want, like a 5 to 10x on the investments that we make. We want profitable growth. So instead of making, 30% margin, we make 50, 60% margin. And then finally, they want quick capitalization. So they want all these things to happen really fast. Sounds great, but how the hell do you make that happen, right? Because that's an easy thing to want, but it's super hard to execute. So when I reflect back on those two problems, there's There's this terrible customer experience disconnect. We're not enabling the buyers to buy the way they want, and there's no system to support buyers to buy the way they want. That's a big problem. But when I think about the solution, we really need a go-to-market system that is fueled by data. And for my technologists in here, the data is the really interesting thing. Whenever we're talking about communications with even our current customers or our prospects in the market, the timing. So when are we communicating with these people? Like, I get blown up on LinkedIn every day by some lead gen guru who's saying, hey, Brandon, we help professional services technology companies, blah, 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 blah. What the hell made you think that I need that? Like, I have no buying indicators out there that says I needed that. So you're literally just spamming me with garbage. And I've deleted you. I'm never going to talk to you, right? So we have to get the timing right, the relevance. So when I'm communicating with you, is what I'm communicating to you actually relevant and useful to you and something you'll pay attention to and that is helpful? And then finally, value. Is that communication actually helping you right now? With no strings attached from us, are we providing immediate value? Because that builds trust. And to sell, it's all about know, like, trust, buy, right? So what makes those three things possible, timing, relevance, and value, is data. So data from your landing pages, your email, your blog content, website, all the stuff we all know about. These are now digital touch points that we can start tracking and building behavioral models off of. And ultimately, that kind of comes back into a real-time pipeline. That's the sweet spot for the C-suite, right? When they can start to see the future, it gets easier for them to start making the investments they need to make. And it helps us, whether we're technology, ops, sales, or marketing, we can start doing our jobs a lot better because we're giving the C-suite what they want. Does that make sense? Y'all following me? All right. Again, not a designer. So when I think about how do you build this system that helps buyers buy the way they want to buy, helps us sell the right way, it collects all the data points. I'm calling it the lead flow system. That's the best I can do as a marketer. And there's really 4 stages, right? So from the time we capture a lead to how we activate them and nurture them, and then actually convert them into an opportunity that sales can win, and building a system that can track data. That all happens in this system. So I think what I want to do is kind of go through each step and kind of share the key things that make each stage of this system successful. So lead capture, right? The goal here is to get quality leads, and that is super important. Traditionally, marketing has been judged. Their key KPI is you need to bring in a shit ton of leads, because more leads equals more potential opportunity for sales. Nothing is farther from the truth, right? You guys have read about it. Maybe you've experienced it. What happens is the more leads you have doesn't necessarily mean they're good for sales. So sales starts following up on these leads and says, marketing, these are garbage. Like, why are you wasting my time? My time is super valuable. I have 5 opportunity meetings today. I don't have time to call or email these leads, and it's garbage, right? So then there's animosity between sales and marketing. So what you have to do is really focus on quality over quantity. And the way you do that, that's the business, sales, and marketing sitting down and really talking about what makes a lead worthy of being put in the system and spending time and money and energy nurturing. Guys and gals, there's no easy way to determine what that is. It could, for Bold Penguin, it could be, a qualified lead is one way. For us as a professional services firm, it's a completely different way, right? So how you solve that, it's just an open dialogue with your teams. In general, though, I can tell you based off of, talking to my peer network, I think what makes leads qualified in general are 2 big things, right? So everyone in here should have if you're in sales and marketing, right, you should have I call it a realistic customer profile. So who is your best customer? If you could clone them, who would that person be? That's the model company you want to go after. What are the characteristics that make that your ideal profile? And whoever your lead is should match that. You should be able to capture data that matches that in some way. And finally, you should be offering them in your lead capture so much value, especially if you're B2B, that they're willing to give you a lot of information. I'm not talking like 15 fields, but think about how Salesforce does it, right? You got to fill out a book to get access to their thought leadership. I don't think you have to go that hard, but the more information a prospect is willing to give you, And if those fields help qualify that person, like for H&B, one of the things is we want you to be a director level of above IT in general, right? If you're a manager level, not interested. Because sales, you don't have the buying authority that we need, right? So you're just qualified. But if you're director level, that's a good indicator that you're a good fit for us. So I think there are, like I said, there are characteristics that kind of fit everybody, but you should make that your own. We kind of talked about this: less leads is less distraction. Your sales team is going to love you. This is going to be important later. You're not cluttering up your CRM with garbage, dude. When we transitioned to CRMs here at H&B, that is a huge problem. And when I first started as marketing director, trying to navigate our CRM and filter through good data versus bad data, it is a time suck. I couldn't even propagate lists, even if I wanted to invite our current customers to events. The lists were bad. So, and we had to have somebody go through there and filter through that. And that takes time and money. So if you have good leads come in, you're gonna have great data and great lists for the future. For sales, this is great because you only have good leads, you can actually convert those a lot faster because you have a lot more data on them and they're qualified. So sales is more apt to take action on those leads versus the stereotypical "these are garbage." And this is really important, but it's kind of fluffy. You foster sales and marketing alignment, right? So traditionally those groups can have a lot of conflict, but when you agree on what a lead is, which is like the leading challenge between sales and marketing, what is a good lead? You really foster that alignment from the jump. So let's assume you've captured a qualified lead. You've agreed on what it is. You've captured it. It moves into the second part of the system. This is where you activate and nurture that lead to help them become a qualified sales opportunity. This is the hardest part of the whole system, but it's the most important. And this is kind of where Salesforce and Pardot come into play. So in a nutshell, right, I'm not going to bleed this stage out. When at H&B, like when I talk about like these steps that happen, these kind of 4 things, as a professional services org, these are just the steps that have kind of worked for us, but the steps for you may be different. So just keep in mind, this model can become whatever you need it to be. From the time we capture a lead, it should enter our CRM and our marketing automation technology. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a contact. It's going to scrape all that data that we captured in our lead capture forms. It's going to propagate it in our CRM and marketing automation platform. You should set it up to actually alert sales, whether that's your sales leader to say, hey, we've captured this lead. If you get more sophisticated, if it's based on territory or tech stack or whatever, right, you can actually have that lead assigned to a sales rep directly and they get notifications, which is great. Over time, this is important because you're starting to build a profile using data of these leads, which is really important. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. So let's say, they've entered your CRM, they're a contact. The second thing is, for us, it works out sometimes if sales kind of reaches out and just tries to start a conversation saying, hey, I saw you downloaded our e-guide on how to migrate to Windows 10. I wanted to see if you needed any assistance or you wanted to chat with Terry Every, our director of infrastructure. That playbook doesn't work well for everyone in this room, but it works well for us. They're also going to get entered into an email nurturing loop. So if I use the example of Windows 10, we consider that an infrastructure solution. So they're now entered in our marketing automation program as an infrastructure like target or candidate. So they're going to get served up in their nurture loops. They're going to get served up solely infrastructure content because I know that's what they downloaded. They've expressed some interest in that. So they're only getting that content because I can directionally indicate that it's relevant versus like me serving up cloud blah, blah, blah when they may not be interested, right? And at some point, there's a sales cadence loop that could come in there. And you just repeat this. And what you're doing is you're creating a series of touch points, right? You're promoting blog posts. You're promoting your content. You're promoting webinars and these things. You're promoting all these digital tools that can touch. And as they touch them, you're building a digital profile, which is really sweet. At some point, and we'll get back to this, at some point, hopefully there's some sort of hand raise and you could say, yeah, they're a qualified opportunity. If they never really interact or their lead scores are high enough, you put them in a parking lot. They sit there for 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, whatever your threshold is. And at some point, they get entered into another loop to try to warm them up. Does that make sense? That's complicated. More. When you
A quick question on that though.
Yeah.
They say they go back into a bucket to where they get warmed back up. Do you have a suggestion or something, at what point do they get just purged and then just start from scratch? Just because, like you said, trying to keep that database small. And, I mean, as a Salesforce admin, my marketing team came to me and said, look, can you get rid of all the leads that are in there since 2007? Like, yes, this is 2019, let's look at anything from 2015 back and just purge that out, whether they're valid, not valid, let's get rid of them and just start from scratch versus just letting that pile up.
That's a great question. You should really, so who should have a lot of influence in that is your sales leader. In my experience, I think if they went through your 4 to 6 week loop, you park them for 6 months and you re-engage them in another 4 to 6 week loop, they don't engage, purge them. Not worth your effort, right? They may opt back in again on something in the future.
Right, they got a little bit of white paper, they sign up for a webinar, hey, great, but otherwise you're just beating a dead horse at that point. I mean,
because what you're trying to do is you're trying to ultimately get people to the stage where you're talking about opportunity, right? Leads, I don't want to say leads are cheap because as a marketer it sounds weird to me, but the real magic is when you actually have an opportunity. So someone that actually wants to talk to sales to be a guide to being closed. That's the sweet spot. And if you can't get there with them in a relatively, a lot of it depends on your sales cycle. Our sales cycles vary, but I would say 9 months is probably, for the size of deals we do and the complexity, is probably 9 months. If we can't really, if we spend 6 to 9 months on you and we can't warm you up, you're just ejected, right? It's just not worth our time. So
your data retention policy could also play into that. And I don't know if you've heard of California privacy that's coming out, but that will also change how long people keep data. So
interesting.
Just like GDPR that they created in Europe, they're coming out with California privacy, and I believe Massachusetts and a couple of the other states are also doing this. So we sue in the United States. In Europe, they don't. So we're handling this a little bit different, but basically if Chris found out that some company had her data in their database, she could technically sue them and get $100. So we're being really careful about that with our auditors right now at NetJets, because what we're saying is we have really, really old data, by the way. We do have things from 2007 that our sales managers don't want to purge. They're that very opposite of what you're saying. So legal is sitting down with them and saying one, this is probably not even correct information. Some of these people might be deceased at this point.
Right.
And two,
Are you
we have to take this all into account, and I mean it makes things like collecting data harder, but at the same time I think it keeps it cleaner. So I don't know if you guys have a data retention policy. We have to take that stuff really seriously.
Yeah, not really, because again, we're B2B and we usually primarily deal in the utility industry. Those guys are usually there 50 plus years. So, I mean, there's guys that when I started are still in the same role, just moved up the chain, just a couple chains up from that are still there. I've been in the company for 13 years, and people are still there as well. So, I mean, it's organizations like that, they have a lot of longevity in their roles, but tech companies, those guys churn like crazy. So if you're looking at that data that's that old, then yeah, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point, Melanie. And even as we sell more sophisticated cybersecurity solutions for our customers, there's well, what is your security like? Are you compliant with things? We're oh yeah. Of course. So those become things we have to think about. So that's an interesting point, and I hadn't thought about that. So thanks for bringing that up. I'm going to add that to my notes.
Yeah.
Podcast.
Podcasting. Yeah. The impact of GDPR and your data retention policy. So I kind of talked about this. I'm not going to bleed this out, but like I said, as customers move through the journey of buying, there's different pieces of content they're going to interact with. What's really interesting is you can lead score them, which I'm going to get to in a minute. You can't do any of this system I'm talking about without some sort of tech stack, right? For instance, Salesforce and Salesforce Pardot. Those are two great examples of technology. We need to actually do this system. So you need a CRM and a marketing automation. I get questions all well, what's the difference between the two? How do they actually what are the different things they do along the journey and how do they track data and use data differently. I'm going to start at the bottom, which seems weird, but just how I did it. If I think about CRM in a basic way, as an admin, dude, a CRM, I know it's like a customer relationship management tool, whatever. At the end of the day, for the C-suite, it produces reports for the business, right? It takes the data you have coming in primarily with your marketing automation platform. It communicates with your customer base. It's the epicenter of all the data you're going to collect from your customers along this journey. It feeds it to your CRM. The CRM has a BI component and it visualizes it and helps you make decisions. Again, I don't want to bleed this out, but you can kind of see the different things it does along the way. There's subtle nuances, like in a CRM, when a person is entered, they're a contact, which is different than if they're in a marketing automation platform. They're part of a leads list or a contact list. So how that's architected, I mean, Kevin and Brandon, you can get into it a lot deeper than I can. Just know the simple difference between the two is this is what's interacting with your customers at scale and tracking data. This is what's visualizing it for the business and helping sales understand how to prioritize their time and what to do to take people to that next buying stage. In a nutshell. Does that make sense? All right. That's a pretty kick-ass slide. I'm pretty proud of it.
I'm not gonna lie, it's really good.
These are all hot photos. You can draw these.
These are hold on. Hold on.
Shutterstock here. Yeah.
So one of the coolest things, or the most, I don't know, one of the most beneficial things, at least for an organization like H&B that this can do, and this isn't anything new, right? Just lead scoring. However, activating, every organization I've been a part of struggles with this, and this is the magic, right? Especially in a sales org, like at H&B. Every piece of digital touch point you have, you can start assigning a score. And ultimately, you have to decide at what point is a sales opportunity a real sales opportunity. Like for us, if someone requests a meeting, right, with us, we consider that an opportunity. You can get really nuanced and say, well, it depends on how the meeting goes, blah, 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 whatever. I just think for speed's sake, let's just say they request a meeting. So you'll see like alert sales when these scores just happen to match, which is great. However, if a contact or a lead doesn't necessarily ever request a meeting, but hey man, they've downloaded our Windows 7 migration lead magnet and they watched our webinar on it and they actually like viewed a case study and they've seen our pricing on it, the score starts to add up and we're like, this person is kind of digitally raising their hand. Sales should have permission to then engage. It's worth their effort. And because we've tracked that person over time, we can see everything they've touched, every piece of content they've ever looked at. Sales now has a playbook for how to talk to that person, how to initiate, because that's the hardest. Sales are like, well, what do I say? What's the message? Like, what am I going to tell this person that's compelling? Well, dude, you can, over the past 3 months, they've downloaded everything we have on this migration. Like, that's probably a good conversation to have. And by the way, marketing has built this playbook for you, and you should use it, right? And here's all we have in our SharePoint, we have all this data and all this content you can reuse, use that stuff. So sales is now enabled to actually close those deals. But again, this is only possible when you have a CRM and a marketing automation platform working together. And that's where the tech, who are my tech guys in here? Tech guys and gals? You're the magic, right? Like I can tell you this at a high level, theoretically, this is the dream, right? Making this happen. I guess when I talk about how to make it happen, I have no idea. I don't know how to do that. That's why at H&B we have these guys, right? Like how do we make this happen? So technologists, you have a real opportunity to break through and be a hero to the C-suite, because guys like me, it's easy for me to tell my CEO about this. He's like, cool, how do I do that and how much does it cost? That's where it gets tough, right? So we need you to help us make this happen and be heroes along the way, right? So I bled that a little bit. So, stage 3, opportunity conversion, that's like, I basically covered that, right? So they're going to go through, you're going to get a lead score. Something's going to come up. You're going to arm sales, we'll call them sales kits, right? Whether it's impact studies, pricing calculators, testimonials, pricing, whatever, you're going to give sales that so they can guide the person to a close. So let's assume we've done all that, right? We've captured a quality lead, we've activated it, we've nurtured it, they've raised their hand, sales has all the tools they need to do it, they close them. And that's great. We have a win. However, it doesn't really stop there because there's a whole analytics portion to it, right? So the goal of analytics is to really understand and make better investments at the C-suite level, because everything we do, whether you're in sales, marketing, tech ops, whatever, you require funding from the C-suite. They're more likely to give you that money if you can help them predict the future. All the things I said: predictable growth, profitable growth, efficient growth, and quick capitalization, right? When you start collecting all of this data over time, you start to build, Salesforce calls this a view of the customer 360, right? This is a digital view of your customer over time. When they're a prospect and lead, even when they're a customer, because the magic is like, once you win a deal, for a lot of us, especially at H&B, that doesn't stop, right? Like, we're continually building relationships. We're looking for opportunities to add more value, more things to sell, et cetera, et cetera. So this never stops, right? They may buy one thing, but then another opportunity is going to come up along the way. Our account executives are going to start working with sales to track behavior, like, oh, hey, I heard this person was interested in this piece of content, or we had this meeting with them. It's all being tracked. And I heard somebody today talk about, like, it might have been you, talking about like the customer cloud or the service cloud, right? So in the Salesforce world, there's like 3 different clouds. I'm specifically talking about kind of the sales and marketing cloud, because that is the epicenter of when new opportunities and new relationships are started. Dude, when you get into those different clouds, you start to connect them all together. You can do some really interesting stuff that's beyond me to talk about, but I just know it's possible. So this is ultimately one thing I'm trying to do. But when I think about, our CEO, Tom, who you met today, and our CFO, and what he cares about, there's a lot of vanity metrics out there: landing page conversion, social media, blah, 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 blah. In my experience, these are the KPIs that really matter, right? So if you can tell me, what is our lead to opportunity conversion? How fast can we close things? What's our cost to acquire a customer? What's our customer lifetime value, which almost no one knows, which blows my mind. Because how can you make investments if you don't know what a real customer is worth over time? All this data can help you build that, but where the magic is, it's real-time weighted pipeline, at least in my world, right? You want to start getting to a point where you can visualize the future health and financial performance of your company from what's coming into your funnel. You can't do that without technology and implementing it and designing it the right way. So this is what's really sweet. Once you have these KPIs, you can start having those business level conversations and showing them that you're gonna be a hero to the C-suite. It's gonna elevate your career. You're gonna actually really start making breakthrough change for the organization, and exciting things really start to happen. Yeah, Brandon, that's cool. How do you do this? Or how do you start implementing this system I've talked about? As I reflect on like my experience and my journey, it's really, I think you start with educating the C-suite, right? So I literally am going to have this conversation with my leadership. I was kind of bummed Tom wasn't here because it would have been great. To talk about like how do we do this? So it's really educating them, creating a plan, and then you have to get their participation in some way, right? They have to have some stake in this. So they feel like they're part of it, and when mistakes are going to be made, there's some learning involved. They're part of it. They understand it, which is great. From a RevOps perspective, man, we traditionally, sales, marketing, tech ops, we've all operated in silos. That doesn't work anymore, right? It just doesn't. So what's great about the system is you have to break down those silos and have a true RevOps model and co-create this system. Once you get buy-in from the C-suite, get all the players in the room and start co-designing the system in a way that works for you. What I showed you today is how I think it works. I haven't co-created this with anyone yet, so I'm kind of like not even following my own advice. So I'm just trying to get something ready to show my team as a starting point. But you should really co-build this with your team, because if you don't, it's not going to work, right? You're still operating in silos. And finally, experiment. Some of this is like, you can have all the data in the world, right? We were talking about this. You can have all the data in the world. You can have all the insights and vision. At the end of the day, though, there's some gut that's involved in it, right? And you've got to just be willing to experiment. Your C-suite has to know that you have to take some calculated risks. Because you're not going to know if anything's going to work until you actually do it, right? But I think having this data set is going to help you realize what isn't working really fast. Startup mentality, right? Fail fast, fail cheap. You can do that with this system and have insights into why. And then you'll also know what is working, so you can double down on those investments and scale. Whew! Talked a lot. So I don't think I hit my 20 minutes, which is a bummer, but 29 minutes, which is sweet.
So I guess I have a question for people. Scott, you just took me, he had showed the customer 360 and the predictive analytics of Einstein. Is anybody using